Welcome everyone to Information Session 9, which is titled Housing for All. At last week's information session titled Creating the Most Livable City, we had expert urban designers from Isthmus and Veros who shared some of our journey to date, their perspectives on creating the most livable city, priority developments for Rotorua, and looking ahead to further inner city revitalisation. We had David Irwin from Isthmus who talked to us about his journey to date, what a livable city means to him, his work, and what the building blocks could look like for all of us and what it could mean for Rotorua. We then had Adele Hadfield from Veros talk about how Rotorua has evolved, what growth means, explored what livability looks like now and in the future and how to get there. We also looked into the key placemaking projects which are already underway. This covered the lakefront redevelopment, Te Wharetaunga o Rotorua o Te Arawa, the Sir Howard Morrison Performing Arts Centre, the Rotorua Aquatic Centre redevelopment, Kuiro Park revitalisation, and the Waiariki Hot Springs and Spa. This session gave a great holistic view of Rotorua's housing opportunities and built nicely on our previous information sessions. These information sessions are really aimed at improving community understanding and engagement, and it has been really great to see all of you here. These sessions are also being videoed, and these videos are being put on our website following each of the sessions for you to view. Now, at today's session, we take a look at what housing in Rotorua could look like as we move to meet growth demands in our city. We will look at how to encourage and enable good design and what makes a good development. First up, we will have Marcus Jacobson from Watchman Capital. Watchman Capital is a New Zealand company specialising in residential property development. They are part of the Kiwi Build scheme and also work with community housing providers. Marcus is one of the directors of Watchman Capital and will today talk us through current trends in housing typology and explore what medium density housing in Rotorua could look like. We will then have Joanna Smith from Kainga Ora. Kainga Ora Homes and Communities is a Crown agency providing tenancy services, home ownership products and urban development. Joanna is a principal urban designer with Kainga Ora and will be taking us through how Kainga Ora encourages and enables good design in both public housing and with built partners in their large-scale projects. Now I'd like to invite Marcus up to share his presentation.
Thanks for that. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm a developer and here today to help, share some of what I'm doing down here in Rotorua, but also what I've done in Auckland. And I guess the key thing that I want to start with today is going to medium density is happening everywhere, right? And it's a function of a few things. One is affordability of houses. So we can't necessarily have the big sections that we used to have. Secondly, it's really about efficiency of the infrastructure that council has, right? So we can't keep sprawling further and further out into the green pastures because to build that infrastructure costs money. So it's about being efficient around where we can build and building in existing places close to the town centre. So I'm going to talk you through today what we're proposing in Rotorua, and we've actually got a development that's underway. So I'll use that as an example for what we're looking to do. And ask questions as we go along if you've got anything, otherwise we can address it at the end. So trends in housing. So as with everywhere, there's growth in population, we need more housing. And so housing supply becomes, how do we keep pace with it, right? And how do we get people living close to town centres? So one of the things that's going on at the moment is looking at areas where we can increase that density. So if I look at the example in Eden Franklin, where we are, that's about a 2 hectare site. And so that's really about, well, we've got a large piece of land there, that how can we get more housing on it? And it's not just about creating density of housing, but you need to have the amenity that goes around it. So it's near a park, so you've got that outdoor space. At the same time, so that means you don't necessarily need to have your backyard, so you don't have to maintain it. In fact, that's one point I should have made. Kiwis tend to be getting a little more, not lazy, but we want to have more freedom on the weekends, right? So we don't want to be doing lawns we don't want to be washing our houses down, right? So we want to have something that's easy to live in, easy to maintain, and enjoy most of the weekends. And so probably the key thing is that second bullet point at the end is using underutilised land. And that's really where you can build more housing that's close to town, close to amenity. And of course, the other key thing is you want those to be close to where work is, a job, so everyone can commute. And I know one of the things the council wants to see is people out of cars, so the closer we can be to the town centre, that means we can walk the bikes to work. This is probably the key thing here which the government's trying to do in working with councils is around, particularly the third point, and I know there's the council, but becoming a tier 1 urban centre means we can move to these medium density rules, and basically it helps speed up hopefully getting consent and development, because one of the things that I find, not just in Rotorua but in Auckland, is the time it takes to consent can be a year, right, with our council processes. So these new rules will helpfully speed up, and it sets a precedent, right, so we know the rules we need to work to. So today I'm going to go through what does medium density look like. So I'm going to use our Mount View Green project. We're building 86 houses, and that's going to be a mix of 2 and 3 bedroom houses, both single and double story. Hopefully most of you know where the French Streets are, your coaching. So the top of the screen, if I don't actually have a picture, that's where the Waikato Rugby Club is. So again, it's got the amenity in terms of lots of open space. So while you see that might look like a lot of houses, this is what's becoming acceptable in terms of living space, right? It's while you've got the density, you've still got lots of urban space around you, but you get that centre space. And what we've done to be a little bit different, I think, in terms of the development, we've changed the living. So we have living downstairs for some of these units and living upstairs for others, right? So you get that sense of those that want to have more of a view can have that upper level, and so look at the view and have their bedrooms downstairs. Next. So we're starting our development. The first stage is at the end of Frank Street, so we're just single level within that stage of the development. And the second stage, which earthworks are underway now, that's going to be more of a 2-level type project, and I'll explain as we go through. Single story. So the thing with the medium density rules is rather than going to get a resource consent, you've got to put your scheme in. These medium density rules are all set, so we're designing to something that's already set in place. I won't bore you with all of the urban design requirements. Someone else can do that. But it's all about, if I touch on some of the key points, it's about having north-facing decks, living spaces that look over that open space, right? So you've got somewhere to look, so you get that sense of space. Planting, pedestrian linkages. So this is actually our first stage in Ian Street. So these are actually Kiwi built houses. So I am a Kiwi built developer, so we've got in this project a mix of Kiwi built houses. So they're, I don't know if you know much about that, but they're set at a lower cap and they get balloted. I've got market housing as well, and then we're also doing social housing. So we've got a mix of typologies, and I've done the same in Auckland. So I've got a development there that's with 112 units. Same thing, it's a mix of Kiwi built, affordable market housing and community housing. And again, you can see from this, in terms of the living, so that living space all looks out onto the pedestrian side where you park your cars, and so you get most of you living out there, bedrooms at the back, and then in the back we've got the back courtyard as well.
What's the living space?
Size. So these typologies are, I think, about 120 odd square metres. So it's a 3-bedroom, so they're quite big.
And what's the land space?
The land was, I've got an architect here, / builder, Jacque.
That one was about 280 square.
280.
Are they freehold?
Yes.
How many community homes do you get in that?
Oh, in terms of the 86, it'll be 14. So, and here's a good example. So this is the actual finished product in terms of, so these are the Kiwi build units we originally did. So they're only finished about 3 months ago. They're all, so quadplex, so they're all 3-bedroom homes. Originally, when I picked this project up, these were designed as a 2-bedroom home plus a garage. But the thing we've found in working through working through projects like this is the demand for housing actually has been 3 bedrooms. So originally, and working with Kiwi Build, originally they thought there'd be demand for 2-bedroom houses, right? But Kiwi families want 3-bedroom homes. It's more space for a larger family. Having a garage is kind of a luxury when you don't need it, so we have a car pad. And so that's why we've found more demand for 3 bedrooms over 2. Another piece, I think, when we started this probably 3 years ago, with interest rates coming down, everyone could afford to buy a 3-bedroom home rather than a 2, because there wasn't a lot of difference between pricing. So that's why we've changed, and that's the important thing to recognise right through this high density or medium density development. We tend to look at what the demand is for the product and change it over time to make sure we meet the market. And again, so you can see probably just another view in terms of how that housing all fits together. So the important thing to look here is that we don't distinguish between what's a Kiwi Build house or a market house. So all of those houses are all similar design. There's no difference, right? And there shouldn't be a difference. So the Kiwi Build units are those top 8 up the top, and then what we call our market houses. So the real difference there was we had a garage within the market houses. So market houses sold slightly more, but they had an additional feature of the garage.
What's your starting range?
For the price on the market, so those sold actually the standalones which were down here, that sold about $740, and that was last year. The Kiwi Build, because of the caps that were in place, circa $500 for a cap on the Kiwi Build. So what I would say to anyone who's keen on Kiwi Build and qualify, get on their website and register for it, because we have in the Frank Street stage 25 houses which are Kiwi Build, so they've got a pay cap of $500,000. So get on their website.
Are you using sustainable material?
Yeah, we are. So it's a good question actually. We're using Metro Panel. So Metro Panel is a product, is a byproduct, I guess, of all of the milling that goes on. So you capture the wood chips, put that with a combination of glues and resins. So basically, it starts as a compound bit that thick, and it's actually made over in the Laminex factory in Tulpa. So they make those on a 7 by 2.4 metre wide kiln or press. And so those boards essentially get pressed, heated, and then they get painted, and then they go up to a factory in Huntley. And so what they do is they cut those to a size, and they essentially get flat packed and sent down to us down here. And then Jaden and his crew stand them. It's almost like it takes a day and a half to stand these panels. And there's a whole heap of reasons for doing this. One is, yes, it's environmentally friendly in terms of the material. 2, it's quick in terms of standing it. So we don't have the issues of timber or gyp that's currently going on in the market. And so we find it's a really quick way to get these built, and they're really warm. So the material is, so essentially the walls are about that thick. So you actually gain more space than you would with a traditional build.
Into your exterior.
Interior, so you still have to insulate, wrap, and then batten and clad it.
So they're all insulated.
Yeah, so you still got your insulation. Again, so these are the shared access ways I was talking about. And again, the interiors, I am happy to say that even though these are renders, they actually look like they're in the end. They actually are quite nice and open. Probably one of the key things is the windows. Those sizes of windows actually make a big difference in that sense of space and light. If I talk about a double story, I better get the room on. So this is the second stage that we're doing within Frank Street. So we've gone for more of the higher, the 2 level, which I talked about. And the one thing that this does, it actually creates more of a backyard because you're able to build over 2 levels, create that same kind of 125 square metres of livable space, but you're actually creating more of a backyard. So if you look here, so you can see that patio area at the back, it's actually creating a larger space. Again, I know you're probably going, it's not that big, but again, it comes down to the maintenance issue, right? Everyone wants to spend more of their weekends enjoying themselves rather than maintaining the house. Ask questions as we go. So this is kind of a render of what these will look like. So you can see that 2 level, again, not having a garage, because again, the garage is kind of it's a luxury these days, right? So if you keep the car out front, it means you've got a really livable space in terms of that area. Again, kitchen design, sparkle, mountain lighting. Again, we've got a mix of, we had terraces, but we're also doing duplexes, and part of that is really about to break up the typology. So from an urban design perspective, you don't want to see a whole lot of housing, you need to break that up. again, views. And I talked before about how we had living upstairs or downstairs. There's a variety of all those. For example, would be the upstairs, right? So it comes down to preference. And then 3-story, right? So that's the next level again in terms of design. And what we're looking to do there is certain developments where it's going to be in a built-up area. You don't want to have everyone having a 3-level house in the back of some of the neighbouring properties. So it's about gradually stepping that increase in terms of the size and scale. So in this case, this is something that we're looking at again. I won't go into the design, but it gives a sense of over 3 levels. You have your garage underneath, you have your living and your bedrooms above, right? So it's about efficiency of space and increasing that, that livable area. So, Gareth, again, skim through, so I'm conscious of time.
You're right.
But it gives you a sense of, and there's lots more of these. You're going to start seeing this in Auckland. We're seeing a lot of it. It's really about how do you create more livable areas close to town and more efficient use of land. So we're running out of time, but again, those are 125 square metre type livable areas. So for me as a developer, I'm looking at what the most popular product that we're seeing both in Auckland and down here is 3 bedrooms. 2 bedrooms, so it's interesting, everyone wants to go to the bigger space. Going to a 4-bedroom tends to be the price point lift, so it's one of the sweet spot that we're targeting. And again, we focus on affordable, that's why it fits with Kiwi bills. And I think for most New Zealanders, right, it needs to be affordable, which does come back to, smaller land sizes.
How much green space do you think fits around it?
Sorry?
Is there a requirement for green space for kids?
No, but part of the consideration that comes when we go for a resource consent is what other amenities in the area. And so so the good thing about where we are in French Street is there's that bike path that runs past. You've got the lake nearby, you've got a number of schools, you've got shopping, right? So we're in an area that has amenity that supports.
So would you consider developing a park with this?
In some cases we have. So in my Auckland project, which is on Mahi Road, we had a site that was about 2.5 hectares. It had a stream that runs through it as well, so we integrated this green space. Put a park at the front, so we did put some seating in. The council did put a park.
Oh,
But we still had a green space though that the kids are going around. It did have other amenities as well.
If I can remember correctly, in previous presentations, there's also a requirement for 1 or 2 bedroom housing, because our population is getting older and there's a lot of older people in society.
Yep.
They only need a small space.
Yep.
So
So in terms of how we work for our schemes, is we identify where the demand is in the area.
yeah,
And that comes down to, in particular, as I said, we do focus on 2 and 3 bedroom. Though the 1 bedrooms tend to work better closer to town centre. So in Auckland in particular, you'll see a lot more 1 beddies close to town, like in terms of ease to go to work, etc. Interesting out in my South Auckland development, there was no demand for 1 beddies because the cost of them was too high relative to what someone could afford to pay. So the challenge sometimes is just to get that balance of what it costs to build those and the demand for them. So we will look at the dynamics and we'll work with, we tend to work with the real estate companies in terms of what they see the demand is in certain areas. So we will look at 1 beddies where it makes sense that there is a demand, and that can be elderly population in terms of them wanting a 1 bedroom house, although interestingly, what we find actually they want 2 bedroom, right? If the grandkids come to stay, they want a 2nd bedroom. So that 1 bedroom, I think, is a bit of a misnomer sometimes around wanting to have those.
I just thought that maybe that's what the council, in their studies, have seen requirements for.
Although I do know, in particular, with their market analysis around the demand of housing typologies, they look at a lot of detail on what their demands are. So I know from the KO perspective, it would definitely be having data for that. I guess we don't necessarily have that level of detail as a market. Sorry.
Could you just talk a little bit about the jobs you create here? Are you employing locals?
Yes. So Jaden, who's here from Halfback, he's our builder. He is building this, which is great. So he's come from he builds in a modular format, if you like. So, before I talked about how the fact we use metric panel, so that's very much a modular type build, panelised build. And so the good thing with the amount of houses that we're building at the moment, that means Jaden, and we want him to employ the people, right? Because we want to build a place because we're looking to build another 500 to 600 houses in the next 5 to 6 years, and we need the people. So it's not that they necessarily need to be skilled today. Jaden and his team can help build up that skill base over time. And the good thing with using this panelised system is it's more about standing it up, so you don't need qualified builders. You still need some builders to supervise, but it's about being more efficient about the labour that you're using. So that's job creation. And with that, it's not just builders, right, but it's everyone from plumbing, electrical, so there's all the other jobs that creates. And in doing so, obviously, then more people are living in the area, and that means there's more people then go shopping, and that means more people to be employed in retail space. So that's kind of hopefully that's where you're heading with employment. And look, one of the things down here is, and I know this has been said, that there hasn't been a lot of development here in the last few years, and I think that's probably had an impact on the number of qualified people from a building perspective. So the one thing that Jaden's going to do is really help with that training with BCITO to help that training and get these kids through on apprenticeships, right, get them trained up, because that just lifts the level of skill and it's needed.
How does the community know that? Is he sort of advertise?
We advertise, yeah. So we advertise as well. So we've got ads out for looking for people. Jaden definitely working through various agencies to try and attract. So we definitely need more guys to be working and girls to be working to build this.
Maybe just some cost implications of going up. So from your 3-bed attached versus
So look, going up definitely adds cost. So it's things like scaffolding. We need to put scaffolding up so the guys can work in the same environment. Just some of the structurally you need more steel and more robust materials to go up. So it does have an implication, but in some ways going up, if we're building in this density that we're talking about, like, you do get efficiencies of building 6 or 8 terraced houses at a time because you're not having to put windows in. If you're building a single house, right, you think about all the windows you need to put around. If you're building a terrace, you don't have windows on every corner. Should get some efficiencies there, but you also with that it does cost more, but it costs you more, but if you can get more houses in from a developer's perspective, then you can sell them, so you get that return on investment building. Because one of the key things is going up is expensive, and one of the things we're finding, particularly depending how you build, if you build up 3 levels, if you've got that vertical living, it's fine, but if you start going horizontal, you start having to build, and you have to be fire rated and all the other requirements for fire cell protection. That adds to the cost. So we're about building up an effective or efficient way. 3 levels is different.
So the price will still start about 500 for either one.
So those ones, so the market ones are about 700. The Kiwi build will be capped at 500. So like I said, there is a ballot with some more to come. And then keep an eye on the next few months because there are more coming. That's my second.
Kia ora koutou, my name is Joanna Smith and I'm in the design team at Kainga Ora, and I've got one of my place-based colleagues right here, Monica Quirk. You may know her, she works in the Rotorua office, and I would just like to give my apologies, Councillor in your team. Darren Troy, our regional director, is like everyone this winter, hungry and sick. So I'd just like to, today I'm going to talk a little bit about designing great communities. People have asked some really interesting questions, and that's a lot of the stuff that we are now taking into account when we're designing and building our own homes or releasing land for developers like Marcus to build new homes. We always have to start with a bit of propaganda. This is our vision now. It's not just about building houses, it's about building communities and people's lives. So as many of you will know, we were formed quite recently in the last 3 years, a combination of what was Housing New Zealand, Possible Land Company and Kiwi Build. And I think the important thing is to say we're no longer just a social housing landlord. We are interested in the whole urban development space, and particularly as the housing stress rises across the Rotorua, we're becoming more and more interested in working with councils and iwi on increasing housing supply, full stop, not just social housing. All the big numbers, but it's probably quite a surprise to me that we own and manage about 68,000 homes, which is about 185,000 people, and that's about 4% of New Zealand's population. That's just in the public housing alone. And also that we've currently got nearly 10,000 houses underway and probably another 2,000 in the pipeline to be delivered by 2024. So there's been a massive increase in our delivering new homes, replacing old homes, and otherwise trying to address this crisis, which didn't just happen overnight. We also have some other tools, as Marcus said. Hop on the website. We've got first-time home ownership tools. We've now got money from the Crown to be buying up land and doing mixed development. And we're also working with iwi on Kainga Ora, how iwi-owned land can be better used for housing. And so that's one of our programs as well, but it's all on the website. So I'm just going to give you a quick 101 on urban design, and actually thanks Marcus, you kind of did half it for me, so I will whistle through quite quickly. And I'll talk about how we think about urban design or good design, not just from a building, not just a beautiful award-winning building, although that's really nice too, but how we think about it from a community and location perspective into the site design, and then a few sort of rules of thumb that we try to incorporate for our own housing. And then right at the end, I'll just talk about some tools if you want to read more about that. So early on, we decided that neighbourhood design is about all those things that matter to people. So yes, we think about infrastructure and cars and all the rest of it, but creating community, creating livability, and a sense of identity. So that's regardless of who lives there. These are the kinds of things that matter to people. And in neighbourhood planning, I had to strip all the names off here, so if you guess which city this is in, just keep it to yourselves. But we work a lot with councils, so we do have teams of people currently working with Jacque and her team. But one of the things that we look at is exactly what Marcus said, the location. Is it close to transport? Is it close to schools? Is it close to all the other amenities that people might need? And then the other big thing for us is infrastructure, so that's why the government's just chipped in over $2 billion to help councils like yours to address some of those infrastructure problems. You can't have more housing and more people if you don't work with the pipes. And we also, in our public housing, obviously we're looking at our existing tenants, what their needs are, how those have changed over time. And one of the things about accessibility is this sort of notion, I'm looking around and there's people here who are my age, who probably your parents let you run up the road to the dairy, or you walk to school with your brothers and sisters and you weren't worried about safety or any of those things. So this notion of a 20-minute neighbourhood is how much can you or your children, who let's face it are the most vulnerable, or the elderly parents, access within a 10 or 20-minute walk of their homes. And so those are the sorts of things we're thinking about now in terms of where we locate, or where a city is thinking about where they might intensify. We have our own sustainable transport outcomes. If you're interested in this kind of thing, do look it up. But again, like design, it works from this sort of big neighbourhood level down to how you do the site, down to how you do the house. Because it's no good saying, oh, you're 10 minutes from the city, but you have to sort of walk through one of those death trap alleyways to get there. And immediately, particularly if you're a woman or young or vulnerable, you're not going to walk like that. But more and more developers and Kainga Ora are developing things that actually allow for a safe walkway. And I'll talk through some of those principles of safety, but it's very important, not just how you relate to the street, but how the houses and things can increase your sense of safety. The other thing that's important to us is open space, both in a neighbourhood, because as Marcus said, as you're shrinking the envelope of where people are living, you still have to provide that amenity and open space. So we think about that very carefully, either in terms of designing around a public park, or I'll show you some examples of how we design within our own developments. And a lot of it is quite simple things to create community spaces. So either we can enable them, we can help the neighbours, we have people like Monica who work in community development who help people when they move in, just to create that sense of neighbourhood if it's new, or perhaps recreate it if it's a neighbourhood that's being redeveloped and new people are moving in. Site design is the next level that we work on, and we've got a few rules of thumb again, which are pretty basic things about making sure that the public spaces, the streets and the parks are safe for people outside. So in terms of eyes on the street, which used to be, you know, the old net twitcher, but actually there's real science around. If people can look out the window and see people walking on the street, the people on the street actually feel safer. So we've got to sort of weigh that up against the fact that we want privacy for neighbours. Parking is always our biggest issue, and you can see from this design here how much space gets taken up with parking. That yes, one day we will have, you know, e-cars or e-bikes or whatever, but in the here and now we still have to deal with the fact that you probably need a car and it has to go somewhere. So in our site design, that takes up a lot of time. Shared open space, I'll get to that. That was a really good question, and other communal facilities. So these are some examples of designs where we've had to take into account all of those things, where we're trying always, if we've got large lots with one or two houses, how could we get more people into that site, but how can we make it livable for them and for the neighbourhood? So this one here on the bottom right is a really good example. That was the one we saw in the aerial before, where we would have a mix of housing. So these would be walk-up apartments, might be 1 and 2 bedrooms. There's some terraced houses wrapped around it for families. Then on that ground floor, you can just see there's a communal room. So, you know, even if you live in a small apartment, you're still going to want family over or birthday parties or whatever. So there's a communal room, and then there's also a fenced playground. So again, if you've got kids and you've only got a tiny courtyard, the kids can play there. You've got all those people looking at them, so as a parent you might feel a greater sense of safety. So those are the sorts of things that we take into account. And the same at smaller scales, the terraces and duplexes that Marcus has been talking about. And just some of that's just the basic principle that we work on, that there's a public street, there's houses all around it, and how can the two of those things integrate so that people on the street feel safe and you're creating that sense of community. We have a whole bunch of rules, and I'll give you a thing at the end. We have a whole bunch of guidelines, I should say, that we work with our own housing build partners who are doing public housing, but also private developers as well who are trying to work with us to deliver housing. I'll give you a link at the end, that's all online. Just watching time. But this is the sort of thing that I mean, that when you're walking along a street like this, people are protected behind landscaping or decks or fences or whatever, but you walking along a street feel like, you know, someone's watching you. And the classic example is those old neighbourhoods that had the bungalows or the villas. There was always a porch in the front, you didn't have a 2-metre high fence, and you felt like you were part of a neighbourhood and somebody could watch you and protect you if you needed it. Hopefully not. Now I have got a video coming up. I'm not quite sure of my timing. The video's 2 minutes. Yep, 20, okay. So somebody had a really good question about sustainability. We've got a growing interest in sustainability, not just from the perspective of our own tenants, but also just long term. You know, the Crown has a mission to reduce carbon emissions. So this is a project happening in Glendowie, Auckland, which is testing a whole bunch of different construction technologies and looking at which ones would work best in the future. So hopefully I can. And this is also just demonstrates some of the design principles that I've been talking about, and also just gives me a chance to shut up and you can watch video. that just gives you also some ideas about the sort of site layout things that we've been talking about in those shared facilities. I'll just quickly touch now on the actual home design. And as Marcus mentioned, we are now doing a mix of both public housing, market affordable housing, which is increasingly difficult with the cost of building and all the rest of it, and market homes. So in some of our large scale projects in Auckland, we have been super lotting, we call it, and then selling on to developers with a bunch of conditions about what they design and how and who it is targeted for. And we also have to work with builder partners on our own standards. Lots of people will notice that public housing is often, it's certainly larger generally than what the market can sell, and also we're building to Homestar 6, so some of our sustainability standards are higher at the moment. We've got some standard typologies that we use, but almost every site is different, and we're trying now to test typologies like if we had a 3-bedroom house, a few duplexes, will it work? Will it still have enough ventilation and cross flow and all the rest of it? So we've got a few of those which you can see online if you like poking through plans, which I do. But these are examples of how you can achieve some of those goals in standalone houses. So you might have a standard typology, but you give everyone a little bit of different character. You've got windows overlooking the street, perhaps you've got a kitchen or a dining room overlooking the street. And you're certainly just looking at how things feel from the outside as well as the inside. In duplexes, we can get a bit fancier, but we're always trying to make it feel like a home, so it doesn't look like an institutional block. Terrace housing, we're doing more and more. Obviously, that's going to come down in Rotorua. And again, it has to be quite tightly designed in terms of privacy between units. But if anyone's lived or worked overseas, you'll know sometimes in a terrace, it's like a horse with blinkers. You actually have more privacy than when you've got a neighbour 1 metre away from you. And then in the apartments, these are actually an award winner from the NZIA, I'm proud to announce, that are 3-bedroom walk-ups in Mangere. So this was part of a very comprehensive redevelopment of Mangere, working with everyone, council and everybody that needs to come to the party for development. And these are quite standard blocks underneath it, but we really worked hard with the architects to dress them so that they look interesting from the street. There's a sense of privacy for all of those people in those units, and you can still have your washing out and all the rest of it. But this is where we're going with those higher intensity 3-storey apartments. And most of them might be 1 and 2 bedrooms. We're now looking at how you could do this with perhaps a 3-bedroom at the ground floor. So if there's a larger family, they still get outdoor living. So all of the stuff we're testing, because it's all quite new. And we don't have the luxury anymore of one house on 700 metre sites. And for us, all of this is about creating a community. It's not just the houses, it's not just the infrastructure. It's about creating places for people to live. And it's about a mix of people to live. Our tenants are part of a community, and the community wants to welcome them too. And just a couple of things about tools and support. If you really like looking at these sorts of things, we've got lots of guidelines on our website. Mostly they're used for our build partners, but I think you'll find they're pretty generic standards, and I know that's the sort of thing Council's working on as we speak. And the other thing that we often do, if it's public housing or a large-scale development, we have design review panels. So we'll work with Council. It's not so much about the rules, it's about the intent and how we get better quality. Because we're building these houses for 50 plus years, and we don't want to look back at them and regret our decisions. And that's the end of my discussion. If you want to look at our website, please do. And questions?
Kia ora koutou. I'm Jacque Rodda. I'm the manager of the growth and development team for district development. So I report into JP Gaston, who you've probably heard been together at other sessions. We've come a few times, but I'll just quickly up there for a couple of minutes just to talk about how this relates to the program we are doing. So I am actually stepping in for Simon Bell. So Simon Bell heads up our development support function. So this function was created in early 21, and it's kind of a proactive team that supports our developers like Marcus in the due diligence stage. So in the past, you'd get developers going straight to the pre-application application into the regulatory space. So Simon's working more in that proactive space to really help developers along. And we want to see everything that's happened. We've been talked about, great developments happening in Rotorua. So Simon's here to help ensure that that do happen. Alongside that, we've initiated part of the development support function. We've now got a developers forum set up. So this is again a proactive two-way forum where we get feedback from developers and also proactively talking and speaking to developers about what's going on the council side. And then the consent process side, so this is outside of my team, but in the wider district development team. So as we've kind of talked about, we've got the medium density rules coming in this year, and we're obviously expecting a decrease in some of the resource group consents required for the smaller developments. And then alongside the medium density rules, we've got the plan change 9 or housing plan change rules coming in, and we'll be also releasing a design guide document to support developers and landowners through that space. Alongside that, we're also trying to always improve our processes. Over the last few years, we've been through a number of reviews and we've been implementing processes, changes to the processes as we go. I do realise there's still room for improvement, but it is something that we constantly work on. With consent numbers rising, this is a big focus for RLC. We also continue to work on our relationship with our consultants, as working with our consultants in partnership has a better outcome for all of us. We have a consultants forum set up, and again that's to support a two-way feedback loop. To kind of move us out of the housing crisis, we recognise partnerships with a range of stakeholders are key, and with the development community being a key stakeholder, this is and with the development community being a key stakeholder, this is an important stakeholder and part of our puzzle.